This series is called They Lied. Have you ever wondered if everything we've been told about Islamic dress codes is entirely accurate? This is a question that often gets overlooked in the hustle and bustle of modern discourse, especially when it comes to the interpretation of sacred texts. Today, we're going to shed some light on one such interpretation that has influenced Islamic dress codes across the globe. Surah An-Nisa 24:31. This verse is commonly perceived as an instruction for Muslim women to cover their heads. But is this interpretation entirely accurate? Could there be discrepancies between this popular understanding and what the actual text signifies? After all, these interpretations are by humans, and humans are prone to error. This isn't about challenging religious beliefs, but rather about seeking a clearer understanding of a text that holds immense significance for millions of people worldwide. So let's dive into the actual text and find out what it really says. First, let's understand the common interpretation of Surah An-Nisa 24:31. Often, when we delve into the world of religious interpretations, we find ourselves amidst a sea of varying perspectives. And the interpretation of Surah An-Nisa, verse 31, is no exception. The verse, belonging to the 4th chapter of the Quran, is frequently cited in discussions about the Islamic dress code for women. Most commonly, it's understood as an instruction for women to cover their heads. This interpretation has been widely accepted, and it's this belief that has shaped the visual identity of Muslim women in many societies around the globe. The hijab, a head covering worn by some Muslim women, is often seen as a direct manifestation of this verse. But how did we arrive at this interpretation? Well, a significant part of it can be attributed to the influence of religious scholars. Interpretations of religious texts often rely on the scholar's understanding, and it's their interpretations that are passed down through generations. In the case of Surah An-Nisa 24:31, many scholars have interpreted the verse as a commandment for women to cover their heads, which has been accepted by many as the definitive interpretation. However, it's worth noting that language, especially ancient languages like Arabic, can be complex and nuanced. Words can carry multiple meanings, and context can dramatically change the interpretation of a sentence. In the case of religious texts, these nuances can lead to varying interpretations, each carrying a different implication. So, while the common interpretation of Surah An-Nisa 24:31 has led to the belief that women are required to cover their heads, it's crucial to question and examine this understanding. Is this interpretation the only possible one? Or could there be a different interpretation that has been overlooked? Now that we understand the common interpretation, let's compare it with the actual text. As we move forward, we'll dive deeper into the verse, its context, and its language to explore these questions. We'll examine if the focus on the head covering has shadowed over other significant aspects of the verse. So stay tuned as we delve into the nuances of Surah An-Nisa 24:31. Let's turn our attention to the actual text of Surah An-Nisa. In this verse, the Quran states, "And tell the believing women to lower their gaze and guard their private parts, and not to display their adornment except that which appears thereof, and to draw their veils over their chests." Now, if you pay close attention to this verse, you'll notice that it specifically mentions the chest, not the head. This is an interesting point to consider. Kimar means something that covers. A tablecloth can be a kimar because it covers the table. A curtain can be a kimar because it covers the window. The verse does not explicitly command women to cover their heads, but rather it emphasizes on covering the chest. This is a significant detail that is often overlooked. Over time, interpretations and cultural practices have led many to believe that a head covering is explicitly required. But if we return to the source, the Quran itself, the instructions are quite clear. They focus on modesty, yes, but they do not explicitly mandate a specific way to achieve it. So why is there such a strong emphasis on head coverings in many interpretations? Well, it could be due to a number of factors. Cultural practices and societal norms often play a significant role in how religious texts are interpreted and implemented. Over the centuries, these interpretations have been passed down and embedded into societies, sometimes overshadowing the original text. In some cultures, the head covering is seen as a symbol of modesty and respect. It has become so ingrained in the societal fabric that it is often thought of as a direct command from the Quran. But as we've just seen, the text itself does not explicitly state this. It's also important to consider the context in which these verses were revealed. The society at the time may have already had certain traditions or norms related to dress and modesty. The Quranic verses could have been addressing those specific cultural circumstances. This head covering thing came after Turkic tribes came from Antarctica, where Dhul Qarnayn first encountered them previously. They were not aboriginal of Arabia or the Middle East or Asia, and they could not take the heat of the sun. Males were wearing long robes with long sleeves and head cover, and the females the same way to cool them of the sun heat. They overtook the caliphs and made two sects that changed the real rules of God. That is when those other rules and books came to be written by them 250 years after the prophet's dead. It's clear that this particular misinterpretation has a profound impact on Muslim women. It's not just about a piece of cloth or an article of clothing. It's about autonomy, choice, and understanding. When the mandate to cover the head is imposed based on a misinterpretation, it inadvertently strips away the agency of these women, compelling them to adhere to a practice that is not explicitly stated in the Quran. It becomes a matter of obligation rather than a personal choice or a testament of faith. Moreover, it fuels a culture of shame and stigma around those who choose not to cover their heads, even though they're not in violation of the scripture. The focus shifts from personal piety and devotion to outward appearances and societal judgments. This, in turn, can lead to feelings of guilt, self-doubt, and spiritual disconnect among women who choose not to don the headscarf. Many women also suffer from lack of vitamin D because of the headscarf. Now let's broaden the lens and look at the implications for the Muslim community as a whole. The misinterpretation of Surah An-Nisa 24:31 contributes to a skewed understanding of the faith. It perpetuates a narrative that Islam is rigid, inflexible, and prescriptive, which couldn't be further from the truth. Islam, like any other faith, is diverse and open to interpretation, allowing for a wide spectrum of practices and beliefs. This misinterpretation also fosters a culture of patriarchy, where men dictate the terms of religious observance and women's modesty. It undermines the egalitarian principles that Islam was founded on. It took away the right God gave the women, creating an imbalance in the community. In essence, the misinterpretation of Surah An-Nisa 24:31 has a domino effect, impacting the lives of Muslim women and shaping the perception of Islam. It's a ripple that extends far beyond the individual, touching every corner of the Muslim world. And so, we arrive at the sobering conclusion. This misinterpretation has far-reaching consequences, affecting not just individual women, but changed God rules. The Quranic verse Surah An-Nisa 24:31, for instance, has been interpreted in ways that have sparked debates and caused misunderstandings. Many have believed it to instruct women to cover their heads, but a closer examination reveals that it actually emphasizes covering the chest area. This is not a minor point of semantics, but a significant deviation from the original intent of the verse. So, in light of this revelation, we must ask ourselves, how many other interpretations have we accepted without question? How many other misconceptions do we carry, unknowingly distorting the true essence of our faith? This is where the role of scholars becomes crucial. They think they are the custodians of knowledge. They claim to be the seekers of truth. But God warned us in the Quran, they have misled many nations before us. They have lied to us, but God is the best planner. Remember that. But the responsibility doesn't rest solely on their shoulders. Each one of us has a part to play in this journey of discovery. We must question, we must seek, and we must strive to understand our faith in its truest form. We must encourage open discussions, promote critical thinking, and foster a culture of learning within our communities. In Surah 6:112 is a warning revelation, God say, "And so we have made for every prophet enemies devilish humans and jinn whispering to one another, with elegant words of deception. Had it been your Lord's will, they would not have done such a thing. So leave them and their deceit." That is a revelation mostly ignored by them because it reveals that all hadiths are fake. We must stay away from the lies they have fabricated and only learn from the Quran. And remember, God said He is the only teacher of the Quran. No one can teach you. By revisiting and accurately interpreting our sacred texts, we can ensure that our practices truly reflect our beliefs. To wrap up our discussion, we've journeyed together through the layers of Surah An-Nisa 24:31, unveiling a nuanced understanding often overshadowed by misinterpretation. We've discovered that the verse, oft-cited as advocating for head covering, fundamentally speaks to the importance of covering the chest area. Remember, every verse has its own context, and understanding it correctly is key to practicing our faith in its true spirit. Stay woke, stay vigilant, and stay focused. Stay with us as we uncover more truth. Please share this. Thank you.